having fewer investigators and inspectors will not protect workers from wage theft, misclassification, and dangerous working conditions. So how are you going to operate with less, even though we didn't even have enough to begin with?
Well, it depends on what the priorities are from the past administration, but in this administration...
Are inspections not priorities?
They are priorities to protect the
But with
American
less
worker.
inspectors, you can't do investigations.
What we don't want to do is weaponize the use of those funding dollars against...
How is there weaponization if you are...
Did you notice what just unfolded there? This is what it looks like when political performance clashes with the realities of governing. Ilhan Omar entered with sharp questioning, heavy use of statistics, and a series of confrontational prompts aimed at cornering Secretary Lori Chavez-Deremer, almost like a rehearsed segment for television debate. But instead of slipping into defensiveness, she responded with composure, factual points, and a steady tone that didn't match the intensity of the questioning. That contrast is what stood out most. The numbers being presented didn't quite align in the way they were framed. The broader narrative began to lose coherence, and the term weaponization became a central flashpoint in the exchange. If you want a clear breakdown of how these kinds of hearings actually play out beyond the headlines, stay here and we'll go through the full context step by step before drawing conclusions from it.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here with us and watching the hearing earlier. I learned that you're also a former union member.
Well, my father was a Teamster.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. All right. I'm a former AFSCME member. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the child labor enforcement. In two appropriations hearings last month, you expressed a firm commitment to fighting illegal child labor. At the same time, your agency has decimated ILAP, including its work to prevent child labor. Your budget proposal will weaken a historically under-resourced wage and hour division. The nominee to be your solicitor of labor wrote a chapter in Project 2025, which literally calls for the rolling back of child labor laws. Madam Secretary, can you assure this committee that you will not propose any rollbacks of child labor rules that prevent children from being employed in hazardous occupations?
I commit to fighting against all child labor exploitation. Absolutely, in this country, we do not want to exploit our children. Consistent with putting the American worker first, the budget does streamline ILAB, that is one of the agency departments that protect the American worker and protect against child labor violations. And the budget provides for about $70 million to ILAB, including $38 million in grant funding, while restoring ILAB's emphasis on putting the American worker first.
So that's a long way of you saying yes?
I will work absolutely to combat all child labor.
Wonderful. Many workers across the country will feel the impacts of your staffing and funding cuts to WHD and OSHA. As of May 2025, WHD employs just 611 investigators nationwide. This is the lowest number since at least 1973, even though there are nearly 10 times as many workers and businesses for them to cover. Your budget proposal cutting the office by $25 million, with staffing projected to fall. Your budget would also cut OSHA inspectors by over 12%, even though currently it will take 185 years to inspect every workplace just once. Madam Secretary, what is the plan to keep workers safe when you're slashing enforcement?
Yeah, no, thank you again. Again, one of the overall core missions is to protect the American worker, and that includes in the wage and hour division as well. And while we are streamlining and doing some cost saving for the American taxpayer, we will always be in compliance with our statutory requirements.
Well, that isn't, Madam Secretary, if I can just interrupt for 1 second. At one point, DOJ was set to close 20 WHD field offices and 11 OSHA offices. If this is happening, how will this protect workers?
So the offices that we have been, that were originally proposed through GSA, we have worked with to bring them online. I don't think that that is a good use of the compliance issue that we have to protect the American worker. And through the DRP, none of our essential workers, either through wage and hour, through OSHA, through MSHA, were able to take those because we know we need those investigators on the ground to protect the American worker, and I advocated for that.
Yeah, but having fewer investigators and inspectors will not protect workers from wage theft, misclassification, and dangerous working conditions. So how are you going to operate with less, even though we didn't even have enough to begin with?
Well, it depends on what the priorities are from the past administration, but in this
Are
administration...
inspections not priorities?
They are priorities to protect the
But with
American
less
worker.
inspectors, you can't do
What
investigations.
we don't want to do is weaponize the use of those funding dollars against...
How is there weaponization if it's going to take you 187 years to complete inspections and you're cutting the inspectors that are supposed to do those inspections? The math is not mathing.
Well, statutorily, we will protect the American worker. We did not have any of our investigators currently. We're not able to take the DRP in order so that they can be assigned to the job that they are required to do.
So are you saying that you're going to hire more investigators to do inspections?
What I'm saying is we did not allow our statutorily mandated offices that we need essential workers like our investigators through wage and hour, through MSHA, and through OSHA to take the DRP because they are essential to protecting the American worker in these industries. We can still cost save and do the job that we need to do.
So American workers can expect that you will expedite investigations to make sure that we are assuring their safety.
American workers can expect that the Department of Labor will protect the American worker, as that is a core mission of the Department of Labor.
Secretary Chavez-Deremer is presented as maintaining composure throughout the exchange, avoiding emotional reactions or theatrical language, and instead grounding her responses in procedural and policy explanations. Ilhan Omar, in this framing, is described as using a more aggressive questioning approach, leaning on statistics, union references, and broader political concerns such as Project 2025 and child labor enforcement to construct a narrative about potential policy rollbacks. The central disagreement begins with child labor enforcement. Omar raises concerns that budget proposals and structural changes within agencies like ILAB could weaken protections. Chavez-Deremer responds by clearly affirming opposition to child labor exploitation, while explaining that the proposed budget adjustments relate to restructuring and prioritization within existing statutory responsibilities rather than removing protections. A second major tension involves staffing levels and inspection capacity within agencies such as the Wage and Hour Division and OSHA. The concern raised is that reduced investigator numbers and long inspection timelines could significantly limit the government's ability to enforce workplace protections effectively. One interpretation sees this as a weakening of enforcement capability due to fewer resources. The opposing interpretation frames it as administrative streamlining, focusing on reallocating resources and improving efficiency rather than expanding headcount. The discussion then shifts to broader enforcement philosophy, particularly around the idea of weaponization of funding or regulatory power. Omar's framing suggests concern about industry deregulation and weakened oversight, while Chavez-Deremer warns against enforcement being used in a politicized or targeted way against specific sectors or employers. This introduces deeper disagreement over whether strong enforcement mechanisms are necessary safeguards or whether they risk becoming selectively applied tools. Overall, the commentary contrasts two competing interpretations of the same exchange. One view frames it as accountability oversight focused on ensuring adequate enforcement capacity and protecting workers from harm. The other view frames it as politically driven questioning, designed to produce a narrative about rollback and neglect, while the Secretary is portrayed as emphasizing fiscal discipline, statutory compliance, and maintaining worker protections through more efficient governance structures.